My music doesn't just sound like something, it also looks like something. From the sound perspective, I open the windows wide and let the worlds come in many, many, many different forms. Sometimes that's in the form of noise. Sometimes that's in the form of language. Sometimes it's in the form of instruments, electronic sounds, sounds made from a computer, sounds captured from a microphone in extremely close focus. Sometimes it is silence. And a lot of the times, it's also paired with or manifested from physical gestures. So a lot of what my music aims to do is to put things that aren't inherently musical or sound-based and assign them to musical constructs of form, repetition, rhythm. So taking, for example, the sound of you brushing a hair off of the side of your coat many, 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 many times. I love being able to transcend the time-space continuum and bring people back. That's wonderful. I would not sit and have a coffee. I would walk. And I'd want to walk with Namjoon Paik and Marianne Amache, two very different composers and artists, two people who played in many different playgrounds of sound and art making. So, going along with Namjoon on one side, pointing out all of the things that I didn't notice with my eyes, and going along with Marianne, pointing out all of the things that I didn't notice with my ears. I think that would be a fantastic afternoon. And then you got to head straight to the bar, have a Prosecco. I wasn't a composer to begin with. I started playing cello. And I did a degree in New York in cello performance. And through just being there and through just kind of a lucky happenstance at the school that I was in, there were a lot of people there who were also really interested in playing new music. So there was quite a collection of many different instrumentalists who became very fast friends with all of the composers that were also studying at this school. I was also great friends with these composers, and through my friendships with them, we wound up finding all sorts of different sounds and collaborating and writing pieces and also just premiering lots of new works. And so this already kind of gave me a little, I dipped my toe into this idea of composition without even really fully realizing it, just because I was working with these composers and saying like, oh yeah, if I put my bow halfway like this and also on the other side of the bridge and trying to find all of these new and specialized techniques, I wound up starting to kind of compose in a very organic way. And then I joined this ensemble Pamplemousse, and it was really through this group that I started actually doing the kind of compositions that I'm continuing to do now. After this, I went to universities and continued in this kind of composer and performer tract, which I feel is actually quite a common thing in America. The economic structure there doesn't allow for the same kinds of opportunities for composers to have access to ensembles. So there's a very long history of composers always making things themselves or with their friends who are also composers and also, have a somebody has a tam-tam and somebody has a guitar and somebody has a mixer. And so you just sort of wind up making music for the things that are there and for the people who have them. Even through my university studies, I continued in this sort of composer-performer mentality and development stage. I think you're a composer as soon as you say that you're a composer. I don't think it's necessary for you to have a long body of work. I don't think it's important for people to have had formal education. I think that many ways in which we come to creating music actually spreads out this idea of the composer to the other people in the ensemble and other people who you're working with. Sometimes it's just about you're the person driving the bus, let's say. It's just not been a part of my musical thinking or the way that I've ever really made music with other people to be so beholden to this title of composer or performer. I'm all of those things, and that's groovy. A great quality in humans is curiosity. And often my music asks for an interpreter to put down the thing that they are best at. In many cases, it's that I more or less do not write for musical instruments, but for the humans who are behind those musical instruments. So if you've trained and worked and practiced for decades to do one very, specific thing, and the very first thing is somebody saying, okay, yeah, but don't do that. That would be so cool if you just put that thing down and came over here. That can be met with a lot of hostility, and it can also be met with a great deal of curiosity. And I think curiosity, of course, is a wonderful way to approach anything that's going to be new. One thing that I come into contact with a lot, and I think it's kind of my own fault in a way, is that I see a lot of performers who come to my music and try to make a very exact copy of something that they've already seen. Really great performance, I think, of my music is when the material has been digested, the gestures, the movements, the music has been really sopped up by the performer as a musical sponge. But then there is the person that comes to the table and shows their personality and their individuality through those gestures, and once again infuses these sort of indelible qualities of a human that are often very hard to erase, but it's part of our practice in a way to sort of erase those things, to be the neutral, all-in-black person who's part of the bigger machine, right? But I always want to find new ways to encourage performers to put themselves back into these musical processes, gestures, sounds, etc. So yeah, searching for that extra layer, I think, is a really good quality. I am very happy that contemporary music now does pretty well include extra musical things. It's not just about the ensemble, the Pierrot Lunaire plus blah, 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 or the orchestra or the opera or the choir or the string quartet, It's also a theater, it's dancers, it's video, it's sculpture, it's sound art, it's malleable spaces, it's modulating forms. And I'm very happy to be in a musical culture that is hungry for all of those things. In the States, I feel like contemporary music is much more mixed up. So the mix between improvisation, experimental, neue Musik, and maybe even more popular forms, there's a bigger mix of those things happening. And I think it's because of the kind of funding structures. So this also might mix into our music and society question, or music and politics question as well. But in my experience here in Europe, that there are quite defined slots of this is contemporary music, this is improvised music, this is experimental music, this is hip hop, this is dub, this is opera, this is ballet, this is theater, this is music theater. And I hope that we're careful about these delineations, because in my limited experience, it winds up keeping these lanes quite divided. And I don't think that makes for an interesting musical culture. I want those mixes to be very fluid. I want to go to, an improv concert, and to see a Neue Musik clarinetist playing with an experimental clarinetist for 3 hours, holding 3 different notes. I want to see that mix happening in a way that continues to have the sort of wonderful funding structures that each of these different sectors of the musical culture has available to it, but not that it's so far defined that you won't see these musicians playing with one another. I think that contemporary music now has a lot that isn't music in it, and I'm happy for that. A better label? I don't know. Someone else will come up with that.